over me. Run through the land, you run through my soul. Bring me wisdom and peace. Run through all ages and all of life's stages. You bring me around to find my release.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have Carla Kenney with us. Carla is a licensed mental health counselor, LMHC, for OCD therapy. And she's the president of OCD Massachusetts and the vice president of OCD Rhode Island. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you for having me.
I've read about you in which magazine or newspaper was it?
I think you saw the article in the Blackstone Valley Express.
That is one heck of a newspaper. It comes out like once a month, and I always watch over at Shaw's for it to come in. I grab it. That thing is thick, and it's loaded with human interest stories. It is really good. Plug for Blackstone Valley Express.
Yeah.
All right, for those who don't know what OCD is, what is it?
So OCD is which camera should I be looking at? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. So OCD is a mental health disorder. It affects roughly about 2 to 3% of the population. I actually personally believe it's a little bit more than that. I think, a lot of individuals get misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. So it entails obsessions, which are persistent, unwanted, intrusive thoughts that you just can't get rid of, and they are distressing, they are time-consuming. And then the other component is compulsion. So people will engage in behaviors which can be observable to other people, but they can also be mental rituals or mental compulsions. Where
like
they
the washing the hands and all and everything.
Well, that would be an observable one, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that. But then there are mental rituals where people might mentally review their day. Like, okay, I did this and I did this, and did I touch that and did I do that? Did I, just a lot of that kind of thing. There could be counting, there could be praying, they could be saying some sort of a mantra of some sort. They could be thinking a good thought to try to cross out or get rid of the bad thought. Those are just some examples of what a compulsion could look like.
What causes OCD thoughts to keep coming back when the person can't get rid of them?
Well, we believe that it's some sort of a processing error in the brain. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't really talk too much about that because I don't know a whole lot about it. In fact, I think it's kind of a mystery to a lot of doctors. But it's just that what happens is the person who's experiencing the intrusive thought, and let me be clear, we all experience intrusive thoughts. I experience them. You, I'm sure, have experienced them. It is a very normal human thing to experience.
Even a song I can't get out of my head, that is enough to drive you nuts.
That can happen. So what happens is most people without OCD can just be like, that's a weird thought.
Yeah. Totally untrue about the person, too, right? It's just like out of the blue.
Yeah. So, I could be driving down the street and I could see, a few people walking on the sidewalk. And I could just have that intrusive thought of, well, what if I just take my steering wheel and just kind of go right over there and hit them? Yep. But it's just a thought. Yep. And I can say, that was a weird thought, and dismiss it and move on. Yeah. Where someone who has OCD gets stuck on that thought, because it isn't anything at all close to what they want to do. And OCD tends to grasp onto the thing that they fear the most.
Fear, that's because I hear a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear that, oh God, it's true, and there's something wrong with me, right?
Right, they kind of go down that rabbit hole. It's like, oh my gosh, well, if I had that thought, maybe I'm capable of doing that, maybe I'm a dangerous person. And then they become hyper aware of all the different kinds of scary thoughts that they have. But the truth is, we all get them. Mm-hmm. It's just that our brain can process them and say, hey, that was kind of a weird thought, and just let it go. Yeah.
Now, after high school, where did you go to school?
I went to UMass Lowell.
Yep.
I started off as an undeclared health major.
Yep.
I wanted to be a nurse, actually. And then I started becoming fascinated with my psychology classes.
Yeah.
And I did very well in them. And I said, I think I want to go into psychology. And so that's what I did.
And you graduated UMass?
I graduated UMass, and I was actually... When I was at UMass, I was actually working in a psychiatric hospital. I was only, I think, a sophomore or a junior in college. So that's when I really started my career working in the field.
That's a baptism under fire. That is, I don't know, the psychiatric hospitals of the old time, back like Worcester State and the other ones, nowadays, I think hopefully they are more modern and more caring, perhaps more easier to be in. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, But the thing is that the treatments have gotten better.
Yeah.
They've gotten better. So that's the most important thing. Treatment is getting better, and people are getting better.
Does my child have OCD? How do you know? What if they don't talk to you? Why boys aren't as... I know, I have a son. They're not as apt to tell you.
Yeah, children are a little bit more tricky because children can't verbally articulate. They don't have the cognitive capacity to actually say, hey, I'm having this kind of a thought, or I'm having this kind of a worry. So usually what happens is parents are observing that their children are engaging in certain kinds of behaviors. Checking behaviors, repeating behaviors, just kind of bizarre behaviors. And sometimes they can be little phases. Sometimes they can be phases because children go through phases at times. Yeah. But when it becomes more than a phase and it keeps going and then it starts to interfere with daily life, that's something that we have to start addressing.
Is OCD hereditary, or is it just unique to the individual?
It's truly believed to be hereditary. I would say most of the patients that I work with, I mean, I always ask about family history, and I would say in a good 90% of them, there's a history of OCD.
There is. Yeah, we wouldn't have heard it from the older generations. They probably would never talk about it. They think there's something they will never say.
It's taboo.
But now, people are talking about it more. Your office, you are based in what two places?
I have an office in Worcester, Massachusetts on Grove Street, and I also have an office in Pembroke. I'm only there 1 day a week. There's very limited resources out in the South Shore.
Where is your office in Worcester?
It's on Grove Street.
Oh, okay. Grove Street.
324 Grove Street.
Anywhere near, oh God, there's this medical thing for day surgery. It's kind of...
Yes, we're right next to it.
You are?
Yes.
Is it a brick building?
We're a brick building, yes. That's where we're
located. You hit that one right on the head.
Yep.
That's not that bad. That's not far.
No.
What are your hours?
I work in the office on Mondays, Tuesdays, and half of Saturdays.
Okay.
My availability is quite limited because I see a lot of children, so I see them after school. Mm-hmm. And so I'll see adults mostly during the day and kids after school.
Any, like, for adults working during the day, any after hours?
Yeah, I mean, my Mondays, my Tuesdays, and my Saturdays are pretty much available to anyone who needs treatments. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. I see adults during the day. Sometimes I'll go in the morning, see a few people, and then my afternoon is usually quite booked with kids.
You're a busy girl.
Yeah.
OCD Week. Carla just told me it's coming up October 13th to the 19th. Face Your Fear. This is a fantastic, the OCD newsletter?
Yes, so this is actually brought on by the International OCD Foundation, which is a fabulous organization, and it does a lot for the OCD community. The website for that is iocdf.org, so www.iocdf.org, and there's tons of resources, and it's also a great place for people to find help because they have a treatment provider database.
Right.
So you go in, you could put in like your zip code and what you're looking for, whether it be support groups, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, coaching, different kinds of things, intensive treatment programs, which are also out there and available. And you kind of plug in what you're looking for, put in your address, and everyone that's in that area will pop up.
This, where is the OCD Week going to be held?
So it's not exactly held in a specific location. So there are affiliates throughout the entire country. So I look at the International OCD Foundation as the mothership, and then all of the other affiliates are just smaller chapters of that organization. And OCD Massachusetts is one of them. And we are holding some events. That's probably the one that I shared with you earlier, October 19th. We're doing the OCD Brain event.
OCD Brain event.
Yes. So we're going to have a assistant neuroscientist that's going to be talking about the brain. She's actually going to be bringing in a brain specimen, and she's going to talk about how the brain, just the different parts of the brain and how fear develops and things like that.
And then you're going to have Sean Sinnock, who's the board director at OCD Massachusetts, advocate, artist, advocacy coordinator.
Yes.
I never even heard. Now, this is going to be over at McLean Hospital in Belmont.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's great. A lot of people know where it is, but it's 115 Mill Street in Belmont. Yeah. Is it far from here? How far?
Oh, from this area.
From Worcester area,
yeah. Probably an hour to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you're going to be there?
I'm going to be there.
Will there be are these like lectures? These are presentations. Will there be many of the the therapists like yourself sitting there waiting to talk with people, or will you just be there to?
Well, I'm part of the board, so we're kind of helping organize the whole event, and we have everything kind of scheduled already. So we've got Dr. Stephanie Maddox. She's the assistant neuroscientist who's going to be talking about the brain and how the brain works and how fear develops. And then we've got Sean Shinnick, who's on our board, and he's going to be talking about his personal journey with OCD.
I wondered,
Yeah.
does Stephanie Maddox, PhD, did she have a personal journey with it?
I don't know.
Did you?
I do not know.
No.
No.
That, who better than that, Sean, to speak to, especially a lot of the young
Yeah.
people and the teenagers coming in who are scared to death as to what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
So it's open to everyone. Is it free?
It is free. We just ask that people register because we're trying to keep a head count.
Okay, October 19th, 4 to 6:30, up at McLean Hospital in Pierce Hall, 115 Mill Street in Belmont. There is a contact. Is there a contact?
There's actually a link to Eventbrite, and it's on there somewhere.
Oh, Eventbrite.
Yes,
Eventbrite.com.
Yep, and it's called the OCD Brain, an interactive event.
This is fantastic. Do they do this every year?
No, this is actually the first time OCD Massachusetts is putting this on. The two of them have actually done this event in other places, but we are participating in this event this year and hosting it.
To attend, please register on our Eventbrite page. It includes Brains Matter with real human brain specimens. Oh my God.
Yes, Dr. Stephanie Maddox is going to be bringing in real human brains.
But is it going to be
And-
from people who had OCD and donated when they passed away?
Well, there's a brain bank at McLean Hospital, so I'm assuming that some of those brains will be actually coming from the brain bank. So it's just people who have donated their brain to science and research.
So it's like that's going to show where there's a misfire. Is that right? Kind of a misfire with the brain?
Yeah, she's going to talk about like the different areas of the brain and how fear develops.
Draw your monster.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Then freshmen's, a raffle, giveaways, and a silent auction.
And we've also created some brain molds, these small little tiny molds, so kids can decorate them and color them and then bring them home.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of the children like these. This is beautiful. This come out once.
Every quarter, yeah. Yeah.
Look at all these beautiful. This is in the OCD newsletter.
Yeah. It's the International OCD Foundation newsletter. You can become a member and actually receive these right in the mail.
How do they subscribe?
You can just go right on to their website. There is
IOCDF.org? Okay.
And at the OCD Massachusetts Lecture Series, we always have their membership brochure. So if anybody would like to join the membership, they can
Downstairs on
certainly
the
do that.
bulletin boards at the library, look for these items because she's going to be putting them up there. Join today and take action to raise awareness and end stigma. I know that, what was it, my father would get us all into the car. We're leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning for a trip. We'd all get in the car, and guess what? We're waiting for him. I think he used to make sure that everything was locked. I'm like, that's weird. But I've seen it. I used to have a friend who he knew he had a problem. He constantly washing his hands. They were all raw.
Yeah.
That's OCD, right?
It is.
It's
yeah.
not always just a mental thought. It could be a physical thing, too.
Yeah, well, those are the compulsions that are involved. So there's the obsessions, which I was talking about just a short while ago, and then the compulsions. So people experience this unwanted, intrusive thought. It usually involves themes of danger and harm, and it makes the person very uncomfortable, very distressed, very anxious. And
Or a threat, right? They see
yeah,
it as a threat.
absolutely. So they want to get rid of it, right? Nobody likes to feel anxious. We want to do everything in our power to get rid of anxiety. So someone who has OCD, they will engage in some form of a compulsion to alleviate the distress that's associated with the obsession.
How about medication, Carla? What do you think?
Medication and exposure therapy, which is actually the gold standard treatment for OCD, is very effective. It's actually the combination of medications and treatment is the most effective. Studies have shown that.
Yeah.
But people can also choose not to go on medication and go ahead and do the exposure therapy piece.
Okay, let's say somebody, I don't know, so somebody thought that they were, I don't know, they'd killed someone on the highway, you know that, and they got to go back and find out.
Hit and run
How do you
OCD,
expose
yeah.
somebody to something like that? You don't want to, here's a corpse on the highway.
Yeah.
No.
So that one's, hit and run OCD is a little bit tricky, but it does entail a lot of exposure driving. So
Yeah.
exposure response prevention is the gold standard treatment for OCD. So what that is that we take people who have OCD and we are exposing them in a systematic way. We're exposing them to the thing that they fear the most. And we do it over and over and over and over until they experience something called habituation. Mm-hmm. So when I talk to children about habituation, I like to give these two examples. So think about when you go into a movie theater and it's so loud when you first get in there.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what happens the longer you sit in the movie theater? Is it still that loud? No. It seems to kind of get, softer as time goes on. Or kids love pools, so I always say, what is it like when you jump into a really cold pool of water? Yeah. What's your first initial reaction? You want to get out. I know I do. I'm just like, oh, get me out of here. Yeah. So, but if a kid goes into a pool of water and all their friends are like, no, stay, it's fine, and what usually happens?
He wants to go in because now that they're pushing it, he thinks he's got it, right?
Well, what happens is your brain and your body get used to the uncomfortable cold water. Yeah. The water actually isn't changing temperature, is it?
No.
It's your brain and it's your body that's getting used to it. So exposure therapy, exposing someone to something over and over and over again will have that same kind of a result. You'll get used to it, and that's called habituation.
Carla, would you say that some of the obsessions are a thought that's absolutely repulsive to the person in regular life? Mm. And they're like, that's not me. That is bizarre. Mm-hmm. It's just bizarre. And then the more they think about it, from what I've told, the more they fear it that it's true.
Yeah, that happens a lot with intrusive thoughts, specifically that involve, sexual themes or violence. That can happen a lot. And people are afraid to talk about it because it's very taboo, and they're afraid that if they share these intrusive thoughts with someone, then something bad could happen. They're afraid that they're going to be put away or end up in a psychiatric hospital because they're having these thoughts. But the thing is that everybody gets these thoughts. Yeah. It's just that someone just like you and I who don't have OCD, we could just say, that was such a weird thought, and just dismiss it, where someone who has OCD says, oh my gosh, why did I have that thought? Does that mean I want to do that? And then it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs, and it can really cause an incredible amount of distress and shame. So it's really difficult for people who experience intrusive thoughts to share those intrusive thoughts with someone.
They'll think that I'm horrible or it's embarrassing. Or we are talking with Carla Kenney, and she is a licensed mental health counselor, LMHC, OCD therapy, president of the OCD in Massachusetts, and the vice president OCD Rhode Island. So you're covering the people in Rhode. Did they come to you? Some of your clients come to you from Rhode Island too?
I have had people out of state come to see me, yes.
Because this is on YouTube, so you're going to be around
yes,
the world.
I have.
Ireland, Scott, you're going to be everywhere. When somebody calls and they want to become a client, how would they reach you?
Well, I take phone calls. Mm-hmm. I have a phone number that's on my website.
Okay, what's your website, Carla?
It's www.ocd-therapy.net.
And you'll find Carla right there. Does yours have the contact? That's how I found you, I think. As long as you've got a contact thing to click onto, it's great. Some people have a website and there's no contact.
Oh, yeah, I have all of that. I have a phone number, I have a website, I have an email, I have my fax on there as well.
So you'll get back to that person pretty soon.
Yeah, I try really hard to not let more than 24 hours pass before I return phone calls or emails.
Carl, if somebody has a family member and you know there's something up, how do you can't push anyone. No. How do you sort of kind of ease into it with that person and say, so let's go talk about it? Can you do anything about it?
You mean when someone calls me and they have a family member?
Yeah, they have a family member, and it's like, what do we do?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's a very common thing, especially with someone who has hoarding disorder.
Is that OCD?
It's an OCD-related disorder, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hoarding, I've seen that show on TV. That is enough to set you right back in your socks. It's just, have you ever gone into a hoarding house to help someone?
I have many times.
You have?
Yes.
So you've got that ability now to walk in and say, okay. Is it really hard to help someone?
It is. Hoarding in general is a very difficult illness to treat. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, the clutter has built up over years and years and years. It didn't just start. It didn't just develop over the past month. It is something that has gone on for many, many, many years. So the person who is hoarding has been in that pattern for so long. And those are behaviors that are hard to change. So it's best to, work with children. I mean, our children are much more flexible when they're younger, and you can challenge them and help change their behaviors. But when it comes to adults, it's a little bit harder. It can be done, but it's harder.
Well, I know that I've watched the shows of the Hoarding. A lot of family and friends have given up on that person, and they're angry. So when they come along with an expert like you to try and help the person, it's like they won't stick with it.
Yeah,
that's going to be tough on the hoarder as well as you, the therapist.
Yeah, there are a lot of barriers when it comes to treating people who have hoarding disorders.
So do you get many calls from family members who say this person
It's mostly family members I get phone calls from. Okay. I very rarely get a phone call from someone who is hoarding saying, hey, I need help. It's usually the daughter, the spouse, some other person that's related to the person who's hoarding who's saying, hey, I need some help. And the first thing I say is, well, is your loved one who's hoarding, do they want help?
Do they want help?
And a lot of the time they don't.
So you can't help?
It can be very tricky. I can help support the family.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll be able to get maybe one or two appointments in, but often my personal experience with hoarding is usually not, in general, most successful. It's hard. Hoarding disorder is a very difficult
What
disorder
are the symptoms?
to treat.
Well, we all know that we've seen the show maybe on TV, and to say it's a mess is just. There's everything from rodent feces, dog, everything, along with.
But there are clean people that clean. There are clean hoarders as well.
Really?
It doesn't have to. People don't have to be messy hoarders. They can also be clean hoarders.
What's a clean hoarder?
Someone that's stacking things. And,
big book piles.
It can happen. It certainly can happen.
Yeah. Well, okay. What constitutes a hoarder per se? I mean, if you walk in and somebody's just, you walk through your house, everything's fine. People, the artists, or the books, they get piled up on this over here. What constitutes a genuine hoarder?
Well, hoarding is when someone is acquiring a lot of things and not discarding things. They just keep acquiring and acquiring. And what happens is the rooms in their home that have a certain function, like the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, the bedroom, they lose their function because of the clutter that's taking place. So, for example, someone who has a cluttered kitchen, you might not be able to cook on the stove.
Yeah.
You might have difficulty opening up the refrigerator. You might have difficulty sitting at the kitchen table and eating because there's piles of this, that, and the other thing surrounding you. I have worked with people whose hoarding is so bad that there are tunnels, like small, narrow pathways in their home, and sometimes things will fall down. Sometimes people will get injured. I've seen dogs living in a hoarding home where the dogs can't physically turn around. They can't do a U-turn, and so they start to learn how to walk backwards out of that pathway. So I've seen that as well.
Is this the toughest OCD to try and help heal? Is it the toughest?
It's a good question. There are absolutely people that can successfully get treatment. You have to be very motivated to really work hard and get the hoarding under control. But I would say, in my personal experience, I would say that hoarding has been the most difficult. Out of all the OCD and related disorders, that's been the most difficult one to treat.
The craziest thing is you could drive by a house where the person inside is a hoarder. It looks fine on the outside. But then when you get in, as you know, it could be like you're walking up piles of this, you're going like this, you're going like that. Mm-hmm. Again, Carla, how can people reach you?
People can reach me through my website, which is www.ocd-therapy.net. My email address is Carla, Carla, @ocd-therapy.net. And I'm also listed on the International OCD Foundation's website and their database. I'm also listed in Psychology Today. So
you are. I guess I love that magazine. I get that one.
Yeah.
There's another one out called. It's not Psychology Today. I get that, but there's another one for psychologists. It talks about different psychiatrists and psychologists have column. What is the name of that? I found it in a doctor's office that I subscribed.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Listen, how would somebody become a member of the OCD Foundation?
Well, they can go right to their website, which is www.iocdf.org, and actually just go in and there's a link to become a member.
There's a link.
Yeah.
How long has this wonderful magazine newsletter been going around?
I'm not really sure how long the newsletter has been going on, but the International OCD Foundation has been around for quite some time.
If a child has severe sensory problems, early intervention is preferred, as opposed to adopting a wait and see. I gotcha. That's the same with autism. I saw that. I haven't had any in the family except for one person, my son's little boy. They say at about 18 months you're going to know. And I did. I would call his name. He was busy. He was busy with stuff, but he would not eyeball me. He would not respond. And I said to them, I suggested, you might want to have that looked into, because I've never seen this in our family before, where most kids are hyper alert. Like, yes, they'll come. He was like, it was like he heard you, but he didn't care. He just was focused on something else. Temper blowdowns, or blow-ups, tantrums over nothing. Son of a gun. Grandma was right. They took him in. They got him early intervention. The people came to the apartment where they lived and worked with him once or twice a week. He is now in regular school. He's now in first grade, regular first grade.
Yeah.
If you get it early, right?
It's so important. And that's why OCD Massachusetts works really, really hard at raising awareness, because the average length of time before someone actually finds effective treatment is like 14 years, roughly. About 14 years to get treatment, effective treatment. And there are limited OCD therapists out there.
Yeah. You were telling me that. Why is that? That's what you'd think it'd be a biggie.
Well, because it's a very specific treatment, and not a lot of treatment providers know how to actually conduct exposure and response prevention treatment. Yeah. You don't learn it in school. I didn't learn it in undergraduate school. They talk very vaguely about it. They'll say, OCD is treated with cognitive behavior therapy, but in fact nowadays we don't even really talk too much about the cognitive piece of behavior therapy. We kind of push that aside and say we're doing behavior therapy instead, and that behavior therapy is the exposure and response prevention treatment that I was mentioning earlier on.
I would think that the behavior, I'm guessing, wouldn't bother the individual as much as the thinking. The thinking can spiral so far the person goes into a panic attack, I would think, if they have something going over and over and over. Yeah. I would think.
Well, the thing is that OCD, the obsessions are often irrational and unproductive, but they feel very, very real to the person that's experiencing it. So it's really hard to dismiss. Yeah. So sometimes you can't even work with arguing with logic. Yeah. So we kind of remove that piece and we say, let's stay focused on the exposure therapy. Yeah. So that's what we do. And if we can catch OCD early, which is a huge goal for us, we want to raise awareness. We want to let people know, hey, this is OCD, and get it addressed as soon as possible. So, it's caught early, and so the person isn't experiencing a significant amount of distress.
Well, we've been talking with Carla Kenney, and she has an office in Worcester and also in Pembroke. Yeah. Is Pembroke's the South Shore, right?
It is, yeah. I'm only there one day a week.
Is it near Marshfield or Plymouth? Where is it?
It's right next to Marshfield.
Okay, I worked up in Marshfield. Yeah. Right, so you've got quite an expanse.
Yes, and I do home visits in between all of this as well.
That's right, you do home visits. So if you're interested and you call and you connect with her, say you're interested in having a home visit, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I can't provide it, I know other clinicians that can. There are very limited people that do home visits, but it is also a very important part of therapy for individuals with OCD, because sometimes you can't replicate the home environment, which could be very triggering, and you can't replicate it in an office, in a therapist's office. Sure. So we do home visits as well. Some of them do.
Yeah, any age. Little ones to the seniors?
Yep, absolutely. Anyone can be affected by OCD. There's usually these two ranges where OCD seems to come out, and we see it between the ages of 8 and 12, and then we also see it late teens to early adulthood. And it does happen after the age of 35, but it's less common.
Yeah. Well, when you go downstairs to the Upton Library, if you're nearby, you can pick up a copy of the OCD Brain, which is coming up on October 19th,
yes.
4 to 6:30 p.m. up at the McLean Hospital. Okay, this is really going to be great. And what else have you got there?
Well, one of the most important things that I wanted to talk about is that OCD Massachusetts has this fabulous programming. We offer free lectures that take place in 3 different locations here in Massachusetts, because we're trying to spread awareness. Yep. And this lecture series is So we have one in Belmont at McLean Hospital that takes place every first Tuesday of the month, and we have experts in the field of OCD and also people who have gone through their OCD journey that want to share share their experiences with other people. So the lecture series is in Belmont at McLean Hospital. It's at UMass Medical School in Worcester, and then we also have it at Smith College in Northampton. And so if somebody wanted to, they could go to all three. So they're going to 3 lectures every single month.
Right, yeah, right in the Hyatt Auditorium, room
Yep.
S1608 at UMass Medical Center. I
Yep.
think that's at the med school, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Our OCD support group?
Yes, the support groups are not affiliated with OCD Massachusetts, but they are conveniently after our lecture series. And not only are the lectures free to attend, but so are the support groups.
So they would meet at UMass too, if you're in this area?
Yep, right immediately after. There's a separate room for the support groups.
Okay. Carla, did you want to give out this particular one?
I did already,
Oh,
but
yeah, I
I'd
was
be
gonna
happy
say-
to.
Okay, Carla with a C.
Yep, Carla at OCD and then a --therapy.net.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you very
me.
much. Gosh, this is great. You have a relative or somebody or yourself in the family who's got OCD right here. She'll help you out. We'll see you next time and be my guest.